Alright, so first things first. This is my voice and I am sorry. Second, I've been wanting to make this video for a very long time, but Starvault in their infinite wisdom continues to mess with my class. I guess the next thing would be is, how on earth am I claiming to be the best Fat Mage? Can't very well go like the footies can in 1 vs 1 another footy and say I'm better than him. Well, for one, I've been playing nothing but Fat Mage for going on 7 years now. And yes, I too get depressed by even saying that. Number 2, I am the only person that can do it efficiently 4 times at once. And be combat viable on 2 of them. And lastly, if you go to any place discussing MO2 and go into the general tab and ask who's the best Fat Mage, my name would be brought up. Guaranteed. Let's go over terms, because if we can't understand what we're saying to each other, then we can't have a discussion. Firstly, what even is a Fat Mage? A Fat Mage is a mage that has to be on a horse because it has no dex and has extraordinarily high intelligence. There are currently 2 cookie cutter builds of Fat Mage, one being an Augmere, one being a human. The Augmere is going to have slightly more intelligence, which means it's going to hit slightly harder. It's going to have more HP, higher natural defenses due to a clade, and you don't have to take armor training. A human has less HP, isn't going to hit as hard, but you can regain mana faster with the clade, so you can theoretically wear much higher armor. Basically meaning you're going to be able to withstand more hits because you have higher tier armor on. Just so we're clear, this is prepping, this is prepped, and this is cast. So in practical terms, this is me prepping a greater heal, this is me having a greater heal prepped, and this is me casting a greater heal. This is neutral, or 0 degrees. Basically meaning that this is going to be the direction you go when you press W. It is the direction that your horse is facing, and it does not change if you are actively turning. This is free casting. It means I am able to freely cast during a fight without interruptions. And it should be the main goal of every mage during every fight. So now that we have all the terms out of the way, let's discuss movement and positioning. There seems to be a common misconception that you can't go left or right while prepping spells. What people don't understand is that you can actually go left and right while prepping spells if you know what you're doing. A lot of the stuff in this game is placed multiple times, such as this tree, or this tree, or this tree, or this tree. They love this tree. I don't understand why. There's a new system in this game that Modern Online 1 didn't have, to where if you're on a horse and ride towards something, it doesn't smack you into it if you go straight on. If you go slightly adjacent to it, it'll make you bounce off it to either side. So all you have to do to move left or right while prepping on a horse is to move adjacent to one of these objects and the game will do it for you. One of the most important things, just in general movement, is understanding where your neutral is. If you think of being on a horse as a degree chart, then where your horse is going would be 0. This 0 degree angle needs to be pointed to your most beneficial place of being in any current situation. For example, outside of Fab, right before the fight starts, it usually looks like this. So my point of 0 is always towards Fab, or any other place that is most beneficial for me at the time. Anytime I get a kill while looking off center, I will immediately snap to my 0 to make sure I'm going in the correct place. As a Fat Mage, you cannot go truly left or right, you only can turn in those directions. So you need to know at all times where your neutral is, where you're going, so this does not happen to you. Another hugely important thing for movement is your turn circle. Fat Mages have no dex, so their turn circle is going to be very big. To alleviate this, all you have to do is speed up and slow down while turning, and your turn circle will become very much smaller. You should be using this to turn around corners so you can have a sharper turn. This guy right here is the bane of your existence. Take a look at this picture and tell me how many people we need to be concerned with. If your answer is less than 3, you need to pay more attention. At the start of every fight, you need to single these people out and make sure that you go nowhere near them, for they are the only people that can truly get you off this horse. Anytime you move around, you need to be watching for these guys, because they will find you. A Fat Mage is a ranged character, so you should never be going next to the foot group, unless you have already determined that there is nobody in there that can dismount you, and you are trying to body block somebody. Body blocking means you're putting your horse in front of somebody, so they have to hit your horse before they hit them. This is a very situational thing that you should not be accustomed to doing, but you should still have it under your tool belt. The last thing that you need to realize is you're on a horse. You do not need to be next to the foot group at all times. In fact, it is better for you to be further away from the foot group than a normal mage would be. You have a huge range of movement that you have to utilize. The only thing that you need to do is be in view of the foot group at all times. You can prep outside of range, go in there, do what you need to, and get out. Best practice is to never stop moving if you are able to move. Now that you know how to move, let's discuss the spells. This right here is the official tier list, don't at me. So let's go from the bottom up. Corrupt is a spell that makes it so you can't heal while you have it on you. It's a perfectly fine spell for dex mages, but the damage potential of a Fat Mage doesn't warrant you using it, unless you're using it on another Fat Mage's horse so they can't heal it. It's so low on the list because I'd much rather hit somebody with a Flame Strike for 70, rather than them get a bandage off that heals them for 40. Mental Healing is on the list because you can use it to remove somebody's magic reflect without going gray. It is purely a rat tactic that you use before a fight. Outburst is a good spell if somebody's very far away and they have chip damage left. You're going to be using Spurt to remove magic reflects though, so this spell is somewhat limited. Flame Strike is so low down the list because of the range. It does a massive amount of damage, but getting that close to a foot group really puts you open to the opportunity of getting dismounted. Thunder Lash is your bread and butter in terms of damage. Good range, good damage. You should be using this spell a lot. Spurt is purely a utility spell. You're not going to be using this for damage. You're going to be using this to remove other people's magic reflects. And you do this with Spurt because it doesn't cost a lot of mana, basically no reagents, and it has a very high range. A mage without lesser heal is a useless mage, but it is so low on the tier list because with a Fat Mage's potential for damage, it is much better for you to be casting greater heals. This does not mean, however, that you should not be spamming this. Having Fulmination so high on the tier list is probably going to get me in trouble with a lot of people, but what they don't realize is the follow-up potential with a Fulmination is so astronomically high that if you get it off, you will eliminate people. Basically instantly. Mental Projectile is a no-brainer and is the only reason you have Spiritism. The range on this used to be rendered distance. Goes through magic reflects, hits as high as Fulmination. A greater heal is twice as powerful as a lesser heal, and since you're able to ride away and come back with one, you can instantly heal somebody nearly double. The only time you shouldn't have magic reflect is if you go over a no line and it glitches out, or your magic reflect just ran out. You should have this on you 24/7. There's literally no reason not to. So that's the list. But how do we actually use any of these? Step 1. Before you even go outside of town or your safe spot, you cast a magic reflect on you and your horse. Do this every single time without fail. One of the best combinations in the game is a Fulmination and a Mental Projectile. I do this all the time because you get damage like this. In fact, Mental Projectile is my favorite spell in this entire game. I use it a lot. It goes straight through magic reflect and does a ton of damage, and if you get really good at it, you can do it while full sprinting at people. If you do not remember anything in this entire video, I need you to look me straight in the face and remember this right here, right now. Spread out heals, focus damage. When you are lesser healing people, you do not need to put them to full. You need to have your entire group at least half. When you are prepping a lesser heal, you should be looking around the room to make sure that everybody around the person you want to heal is also healed. If they are not, start prepping another heal for the guy that you need to next. Just the opposite is true for damage. Once you find somebody that you've damaged, you need to stick on them and only damage that person until they are dead. It is a waste of mana and your time to damage 5 people for 50 damage each. They're just going to be healed and you have killed nobody. Once the person is dead and out of the fight, they can no longer be healed, so you need to focus damage at all times. When you prep a spell, you have 20 seconds to cast it, so what you need to start learning how to do is re-prepping spells. I currently have a Fulmination prepped and I'm going over a hill and spot a horse. I don't have much time left on the prep, and I want to cast Fulmination on this guy's horse. So what I'm going to do is I currently have Fulmination on my middle mouse button. I'm going to press 3 to use a lesser heal, then immediately press middle mouse button again to prep another Fulmination. I now have 20 seconds to determine what I want to do instead of the 2 that I would have had if I didn't do anything. Another hugely important skill that you need to start having is determining how much damage you need to do and what spells are going to have that damage. I just hit Sasuya for 48 with a Thunder Lash, and now he's foamed. So the question is he going to die? Yes, he is, but how did I know that?
I think he is.
Anytime you hit somebody, you need to look at the HP and how much you chunked them for. For example, I'm coming over here with the Flame Strike and I hit this man right here. I hit him for 73 damage and he's a Thursar. Thursars take 2 Flame Strikes, 1 Thunder Lash. I was originally going to do a mental projectile, but there's too many trees and I don't want to waste my gas. I start prepping Thunder Lash, but I see him bandaging and I know I'm not going to be able to get to him before the bandage pops off. So then I start prepping Flame Strike. This should have killed him, but it was a very low row on the Flame Strike. But this is some of the stuff that you need to start thinking about just intuitively. Another thing people get mad at me for is I start every engagement with a fulmination. They get upset that I do this because everybody nowadays has Magic Reflect on. But this fulmination is not necessarily for damage, it's to see what I can get away with in your group. If at the start of the fight I fulminate you and it goes through and I hit you for the damage, that basically means that I can do anything to you at that point. If the fulmination gets reflected with the Magic Reflect, or if later down the line it doesn't get reflected but you get purified, I have to change up my tactics for your group. It takes nearly 4 seconds to just cast fulmination and a Puri if you get Magic Reflected, but it takes nearly twice as long to cast a spurt and then whatever you want to afterwards. It's a risk-reward play that allows you to judge a group based on their skill and if they know what they're doing, and if they don't know what they're doing you get instant damage. Healing the head of your horse is going to be healing it for more HP. However, with the rocky terrain and if somebody shoots your horse, you will sometimes miss. Therefore, it is always better to look straight down and to always get the guaranteed cast on your horse. It is much better to get a 23 heal than miss your horse entirely. Unless it's a Fat Mage, you should always be trying to kill the guy on the horse and not the horse itself. If a Fat Mage's horse dies, they themselves die. But an MA and an MC, if their horse dies, they're still in the fight. You could argue that if an MA dies, they become more of a threat to you because they can now pull out a longbow and hit you for harder. So your goal in another mounted fight, so long as it's not a mounted Fat Mage, should be to kill the rider first, and then after that you can kill the horse. The last thing really isn't part of the guide, but more of a moral principle. Just because you can kill people that are fighting on foot doesn't mean you should. The footies are here for PvP, and if you go in and wreck it every day, they're going to start to hate you. Let them fight it out, you do not need to be a part of everything. The last thing that we need to talk about is gear. I'm trying to future-proof this guide, so I'm not going to stand here and tell you to wear this, that, and the other thing, in terms of plate scales or whatever else. What I am going to tell you is the general rule for every mage in this entire game. Your mana regeneration needs to be enough to where that you always can cast a lesser heal. You can test this by using up all your mana on a training dummy, then equipping the armor that you want. If you can continue to cast lesser heals once you put on the armor, then you're good to go. If you cannot, the armor is too heavy for you. In this example, I'm not regaining enough mana per ticks to cast a lesser heal in the end, so this armor is too heavy for me. The current meta is to have a tower shield on your hotbar so you can equip it and unequip it to gain the mana and protection. I don't know if this is going to change in the future, so I'm not going to spend much time on this. If your horse dies, you die without fail. So what you need to do is spend as much money as you can to protect the horse with the best armor that you can afford. Horsebacks slow your horse down without giving much protection, but you still should have some on you at all times, just in case you kill somebody and need to loot. So just keep them in your inventory. Another somewhat controversial thing I do is I take anatomy, so I always have bandages on me. The reason why I do this is because I can maneuver while still being healed by the bandage. For reagents, you're going to need hundreds of water and calamine, just for lesser heals and everything else. You're going to need a bunch of rock oil, since you're going to be using Magic Reflect a bunch, a little bit of sulfur, a lot of cuprum, a little bit of coal, and a ton of niter, because a bunch of the spells that we use depend on niter. You're also going to need some food for your horse, and also a small spirit box or large spirit box, depending on what you want. It's also good to have a torch, just in case. Please always make sure that you're well equipped and have a full set of armor and full of reagents. Do not be one of these people that think it's perfectly fine to go around with just a tower shield, because if you do, this is what's going to happen to you.
What?
And that's everything you need to know. Well, at least I think it is. I'm kind of a big dummy, so I might have missed something. So this is my Discord handle if you need to talk to me. I am basically a nobody. Just say what you want to, and then I'll try to help you out the best I can. I love you very much. Be good. Make sure you drink water. And tell the VII kids I say hi if you see 'em.